I was aiming for my first video in this new style to not be so political, but I'm currently triggered, guys, and I need to talk about this topic that has recently re-emerged in the past few days. Ever since the Charlottesville white nationalist rally and President Trump stating that both sides were violent really seemed to bring out the radicals, mostly on the left, who began bashing and hating on those who are more moderate and prefer to take a more balanced look on issues, which is sort of where I would classify myself. Various moderate bashing memes have been circulating social media recently, and each one is just so dishonest and logically fallacious that it absolutely gets my blood boiling. So let's take a look at just a few that my Facebook friends shared. It really disappointed and disheartened me seeing them post such bullshit, but I would like to preface by also stating that when I speak the centrist, I'm mostly speaking on behalf of myself and those who may also agree with my principles. It's important to understand that centrism isn't a collective. It's usually individuals who hold varying principles but attempt to be bipartisan. Wait! Help! I'm being stabbed! Wow, tricky situation, difficult to know what's really going on. Don't want to do anything crazy here. What if you kept things as they are, but only moved the knife a few inches more into them each financial year? Centrism. Not only is this comic rather reductionist, it's also extremely dishonest. It should also be mentioned that this isn't even centrism. This is more of appeasement, which is a diplomatic policy of making political or material concessions to an enemy of power in order to avoid conflict. It also doesn't help that the centrist group, again, is rather loose. In general, a centrist does try to look at both sides, but that doesn't mean what this comic so dishonestly tries to portray. And that is, the centrist is so dismissive to the tragedies in the world in an attempt at appeasement. And it's entirely possible for the centrist to be actively against the wrongdoings on all sides of the political spectrum. I've also seen a few people who are confused on appeasement versus centrism share this comic around in an attempt at debunking centrists. The Paradox of Tolerance by philosopher Karl Popper. Should a tolerant society tolerate intolerance? You want more tolerance, respect my ideas. The answer is no. It's a paradox, but unlimited tolerance can lead to the extinction of tolerance. But if we extend tolerance to those who are openly intolerant, let's give them a chance. The tolerant ones end up being destroyed, and tolerance with them. Any movement that preaches intolerance or persecution must be outside of the law. As paradoxical as it may seem, defending tolerance requires to not tolerate the intolerant. Now, I agree with this comic for the most part. It's important to try to find a middle ground within reason, but a radical isn't always ready to compromise, and being tolerant of violence doesn't solve the problem either. It's rather dismissive. Centrists usually take a look at a situation from a nonpartisan lens and determine, with objective reasoning, whether a situation is truly a case of radical intolerance, or if the situation is truly somebody crying wolf in order to socially reprimand the opposing group for political or sociological agenda.
Well, then what? You haven't voiced a solution yet.
That's the real problem, isn't it? Trying to find a solution. I don't claim to know the answer, but I do know what doesn't work and what has worked in the past. As the previous comic so nicely puts, you can't just tolerate the intolerant forever. It's important to speak with the extremes to understand what goes on in their head and see if an agreement can be met, and to see if it's possible to save the extremists before they actually do become violent. A man by the name of Daryl Davis has done a fantastic work in converting the extremes to become more rational, and has even made some KKK members disavow by simply just befriending them. I'll just let him speak in his fantastic message in this trailer of his documentary, Accidental Courtesy.
The greatest speeches ever given in this country were the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln and the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. Excuse me a minute. This is where he stood and gave that famous speech.
Black men and white men.
All you have is an etching in the concrete. There's no plaque, there's no sign. Millions of people trample all over that, not even realizing how important that spot is. He says, I have a dream. I call this stepping on the dream. I'm Daryl Davis. I'm a musician, actor, author, and a lecturer. People always say to me, Daryl, how can you have this stuff? Why don't you burn it? As shameful as it is, you don't burn our history, regardless the good, the bad, the ugly. And the Ku Klux Klan is as American as baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Hey, Frank, how you doing, man? Hey, Gary.
Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
Here's my great Titan, Rube. Let me put it on.
Yeah.
We've got members as young as 18, and we also have junior Klan members.
We would fight to the last bullet for our people.
Okay, so what can we all do together as a nation?
Help save the white race.
Help save the white race. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? Look at me and tell me to my face why you would lynch me.
This country's been through a lot.
It still has a long ways to go.
An awful long way, as news will tell you.
I'm mad. We should all be mad.
We have a society that has determined that we should fear the black man.
Give that person a platform. Allow them to air their views, and people will reciprocate. I never set out to convert anybody. In my quest, some of them ended up converting themselves.
Hey, this is somebody I...
Why so much aggression on both sides? Frankly, I think both sides are at fault here, no doubt about it. So sad to see this aggression on both sides of the conflict. Wow, so much for tolerance. Can't believe the hate and violence on both sides. Yeah, sure, the asteroid is violent, but the Earth is also violent, so obviously there is blame on both sides. Not only does this comic build a strawman argument, which is a logical fallacy in which an individual gives an impression of refuting an opponent's argument while refuting an argument that was not presented by the opponent. So the artist builds a strawman by using these ridiculous and absurd examples of their centrist character, ignoring the threats around them. Ignoring the absurd examples, since this was an attempt at comedy, let's focus on the first panel, since it's actually the meat of the strawman. The centrist in this comic sort of dismisses and blames both parties for being aggressive, while you have the group on the left, who are literal Nazis, and the group on the right, who are not literal Nazis, but are actually the good guys. Look how good they are. They said they're not Nazis, so they're nice. And then we have the meanie fucks over there on the left who hate Jews and want to kill people. The issue is that this author uses their bias in conjunction with reductionism. People on the left like to frame the Charlottesville incident as good Samaritans versus evil Nazis, while those on the right like to frame it as law-abiding permit-carrying demonstrators versus violent leftist terrorists. A centrist sees varying individuals from various political spectrums and some extremist groups from various political spectrums. The centrist isn't passive about the violence. The centrist is upset at the violence and would prefer it to stop on both ends. Violence leads to more violence, and acting violent towards a group with which you disagree usually emboldens their hateful belief system. You essentially give them justification for continuing to hate you. I believe this following meme perfectly sums up my feelings on this issue. Oh, you don't support violent radicals from either side of the political spectrum? I guess that means you have no convictions of your own then. Everyone knows you can't believe in something without behaving like an angry toddler. Or even more accurately by Chris Raygun, centrism isn't there's a middle ground between Nazis and anti-Nazi. It's let's not support a cunt just cause they hate another cunt. It's easy to have a bias in politics. Even centrists have biases and different leanings. but a centrist usually tries to prevent that lean from affecting their rational judgment. You can have a bias and be bipartisan, and that's precisely what a centrist is. It's not someone who doesn't care about the wrongdoings in the world or around them. It's not somebody who just wants to dismiss everything and then just try to shrug it off to the next day. It's someone who tries to find the truth in the very dishonest world of politics.